r/AskReddit by Reddit watchers. Truckers of Reddit. What is something you have witnessed driving at night that gave you chills? Not nighttime but close enough. My dad is a truck driver who regularly makes trips to a nearby major city. This city is known as one of the most dangerous cities in the country, so my dad takes special precautions. One of them being he always leaves several car lengths in front of him at a red light so he can get out if needed. One day around 5 AM he was sitting at a red light and someone hit him so hard that his truck moved forward several feet and it knocked the hat off of his head. He looked in the rearview mirror and saw someone run up to the back of his trailer and faint. He decided he should stay put and wait for the police to show up. Turns out a Cadillac had hit him from behind going 110 miles per hour. Both men in the front seat were completely decapitated. You could see the spot on the trailer where their heads hit. The driver was still drunk and high from the night before. My dad was put on leave for several weeks and endlessly questioned. For some reason the police thought it was suspicious that he had left space between him and the next car. He felt really guilty about it for a long time, but we told him had he not been there they would have hit the cars in front of him and more people likely would have died. I was a kid when this happened and he never let me ride along with him again. I almost died in a situation like this. 4-lane highway with a median. We were headed south. And a truck was pulling out of a gas station from the west across the median and turned to go north. We barely missed going under, caught the back tire at 65 miles per hour and jackknifed off. Had we not hydroplaned slightly when slamming on the brakes we would have gone right under and lost the upper part of our torsos. Bad wreck still, multiple surgeries. Large lawsuit. Not fun. Someone rear-ended him and the cops were suspicious of him? They thought he slammed on his brakes on purpose? That doesn't even make any sense. Who ran up behind him and fainted? Obligatory not a trucker. But I work as a customer service rep for a trucking company in Omaha. Two stories that come to mind. Both are quite serious. The first one happened about a year or two before I started. One of our local Omaha drivers was grabbing a load from the Council Bluffs rail and headed towards downtown 13th Street. A woman had stepped out in front of his truck and she was killed instantly. Investigators had later found a suicide note she had written shortly before our driver hit her. The driver was a new guy and he quit immediately after the accident. This one happened shortly after I started working there. We dispatched local and OTR drivers and one evening, just before shutting down for the day, we stopped getting multiple calls from people in the California area headed west. Motorists are reporting that one of our drivers is speeding, cutting off people, not signaling, and just all around reckless driving. We managed to identify the driver in question, call him up, and the guy is inconsolable. Turns out his sister had been murdered at her apartment and he was literally racing to get back to NE as fast as his truck could take him. My boss told him to park the truck immediately and bought 2 plane tickets. One for the driver to fly back to Omaha and another ticket to fly a volunteer out to California to pick up his truck. That last one is insanely wholesome. Good on your boss for being a good guy. Aside from the whole sister getting murdered thing. I still remember the top story from this thread from 6 years ago. Needless to say, it played hell with my power naps from then on. U/the gyro. What the duck? Meth is a hell of a drug. Where do you want me to start? I'll stick with a story from when I was straight and sober. Coming back from Kununurra, very northern town in Western Australia, to Perth one night. Seen no one else on the road for hours. But every now and then, on a long straight, I could see a set of taillights in the distance. All of a sudden, there's the taillights attached to a trailer that stopped dead in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes and swerved around it. And that's when I realized that the truck towing 3 trailers had run off the road into the only large tree for miles. If not for how this ended, I'd laugh my ass off at the irony. I pulled forwards, off the road, and jumped out. My co-driver, who'd been asleep, but got thrown out of the bunk when I slammed on the brakes, was already calling emergency services. As I got to the back of my third trailer, wisps of smoke started from under the cab of the Volvo wrapped around the tree. I raced back, grabbed a fire extinguisher and was running towards the wreck when I heard a groan from the ditch. about 10 meters in front of the wreck. The driver had been thrown clean through the windscreen. And while he was an absolute mess, at least he was alive. The Volvo was, by now, in flames. But that just gave me some light to inspect old mate for injuries. And then I heard the sound that, even now, tears me to the core. A thin, high-pitched squeal, gradually progressing into the most soul-piercing scream I've ever heard. His co-driver had also been asleep in the bunk. And with the truck wrapped around the tree, he was stuck. And I hadn't thought to fight the fire. And now some poor bastard was burning to death, trapped in a steel coffin, while I just collapsed, impotent and broken. Edit. Close parentheses to keep a reader happy. Something similar happened to my best friend's dad. I don't remember the full story, but I know he was the one sleeping in a 2-up cab. The driver decided to watch YouTube videos on his phone while heading down the highway. He lists into the oncoming lane and another car is coming the other direction. Not sure what happened, either head-on collision or swerve. But I think swerve. Truck ended up flipped. The driver made it out. My friend's dad didn't. I wasn't even the one related to him. But I can never forgive that driver. I will never meet him. But the thought of having someone else's life in your hands and staring at your phone while driving makes me so mad. That's a horrible story. Can we have the other, possibly lighter story? The one where you were getting drunk? I-25 south of Albuquerque. There's a huge dip. Straight down one side of a canyon and up the other. I'm a very safe driver. So I took the downgrade slow and crawled up the other side with my hazards on. Looking in my mirror I see headlights from another truck at the bottom. Then 2 jets of flame shoot like 20 feet into the air above it. This truck runs past me doing 80 up the slope. I didn't even know it was possible to put nitros into a semi. I know it ain't legal. But I thought the devil himself was riding up on me. Dear God, I want to see nitro semi trucks racing on a racing track. Probably the plot of the next Fast and Furious movie. Not me but a friend. Saw a naked kid, 9-10 years old, walking at night on a long empty stretch of Highway 41 south of where it meets Highway 285. In New Mexico. He picked the kid up and called it into local law enforcement. The kid wouldn't speak. A state trooper showed up. And according to my friend, acted like it was no big deal. Like he had seen it all before. My friend asked the officer to hold up. And what was going on? The officer said, "Don't worry about it." And just turned and walked away, loading the kid into his vehicle. He tried to find the newspaper articles about it in papers from nearby cities but never found anything. He looked and couldn't find anything in any missing persons filings. He told this story with the haunting simplicity and air of dread. Probably a local mentally challenged kid. The cops' reaction and the fact that it didn't make the news tend to indicate that it wasn't the first time they did something alike. And a good cop sees no reason to publicize what could be embarrassing to the family. That's a nicer theory than where my mind went first, which was pedophile kidnap ring and the police were in on it. A friend who is a truck driver told me this one. He was driving through the edge of some bushland on his way back to Perth, Western Australia, when he hit a kangaroo. He stopped the truck, grabbed his knife, in case he needed to dispatch it, his flashlight, and got out. He went over to the kangaroo. It needed to be dispatched, as it was alive and in immense pain. But he got this weird feeling that he was being watched. He flashed his light around and saw dozens of pairs of red eyes watching him. The whole mob of kangaroos was just standing there watching him kill one of their mates. Kangaroos have red eye shine. He quickly dispatched the kangaroo, bolted back to his truck, and took off. He said it was the creepiest shit he had ever seen on the road. If you think about it more deeply, it's kinda spooky. For him it was an accident, and killing the kangaroo an act of mercy. But for the gang of roos, he'll well be forever the budgie man who kills their beloved ones in the middle of the night. He is legend. There's another driver where I work that tells a story about driving through the desert in Arizona back in the 80s with nothing around for miles when he broke down in the middle of the night. It was an easy fix. His fuel filter was clogged. He drained it a little to free up the fuel and got the truck running. About 15 minutes later, He took off down the highway when he saw a man that was out of breath on the side of the highway that was staring at him as he passed. He said it looked like the guy had been running toward him until he got his truck running and drove away. He said if he had been there a few more minutes the guy would have been able to walk up on him with his head in the engine bay. He said the look on the guy's face gave him chills, and telling the story you could see it still creeped him out. There's one rule we never break. Never stop for anyone. It's entirely possible this was a guy who got lost on a hiking trip. Finally saw someone. Ran towards them. Only for them to drive away. Leaving him hot. Thirsty. And stranded. The look of a guy whose hope just vanished. This happens. Especially in the Superstition Mountains area. Those mountains have a habit of eating people. Usually if a hiker disappears in there, no trace of them is ever found. My buddy is a trucker. He was stopped at this rest stop somewhere in Ohio. He was outside of his truck checking something near the rear trailer wheels. A car pulled up beside him and the driver rolled his window down. The driver was a middle-aged male and creepily asked my buddy if he wanted to have a good time. My buddy responded, "Nah, leave me alone." The guy driving the car sped off. Around 2 hours later, my buddy went back outside to check something near the rear wheels again. As he was bent down, he heard this car approaching quickly. It was the same man he encountered earlier. The man attempted to hit my friend with his car at probably 25 mph, but was unsuccessful as my friend jumped under the trailer. The driver of the car stopped about 30 feet from the trailer and put his car in reverse. As he began to back up, my buddy grabbed his tire iron and threw it at the car. The tire iron smashed through the rear window of the car. The driver sped off immediately. My buddy didn't get a plate number or great description of the vehicle or guy as it all happened at night. He was upset that he lost his tire iron though. In the 90s I lived in a logging camp in northern British Columbia. It was a big one made up of trailers and had about 300 people living there including families. I drove a water truck on weekends when the camp was on days off. When driving on logging roads you radio your kilometer markings with the name of the road to avoid collisions. Empty on Windfall 10 to say you were 10 clicks on the Windfall road heading away from camp, and loaded on Windfall 10 to say you were coming back. Anyways, being a weekend I didn't expect anyone to be hanging around except a skeleton crew. I had no idea that there was a kid's birthday party up on the top end of the Windfall road. It's beautiful up there with a clear landing and a pond. So why not? The family hired 2 clowns from a nearby town for the kids. Apparently the clowns wrapped up their show and were heading back to camp, but they were not using the radio. I'm on the road in a big water truck doing 50 kh and they come bombing around a corner doing 50 kh in a ducking clown car and we almost collide. I blasted the horn as this car with a plastic star on its roof goes whipping by with 2 screaming clowns inside, and I could just not figure out what the duck had just happened. This actually made me laugh. Not me, but my aunt. She was driving at 1 AM down rural roads in the UK. They tend to be quite narrow. No paths and no lighting, and didn't see a jogger in the road. Wearing all black. Sadly she hit him and he died. The emotional toll on her was too much. She quit driving and became reclusive for some time. Who wears all black to run at night? That's like what not to do 101. I feel bad that your aunt felt so bad when the guy was a moron in the first place. My father-in-law said he was hauling a truckload of Furbies when they started talking to each other. He said they didn't stop talking the whole time he drove halfway across America. Furbies are creepy as duck. My kids wanted them. We finally threw them out because they turned evil from my son roughhousing with them. Creepy. The old ones were hilarious when the batteries got low. They would talk and look like they had just smoked a pound of weed. The new ones were the LCD eyes. No hope. Not mine but my grandfather's. One night after completing his water delivery he stops at a roundabout to let the other car go through, but it doesn't, and soon people hop out with knives and tools and they yell at him to cut the engine and to hop out of the truck. He guns it, smashing their car out of the way, and goes around the roundabout and drives to the nearest police station and tells them what happens. He thinks they were trying to steal the bulldog from his truck cause the only way to get it is to steal it or buy a Mack truck. What is a bulldog? In truck terms, not the dog lol. I think it's the little dog on the hood. Like the Mercedes logo with a Jaguar. Cousin's husband is a trucker. Witnessed a shootout between cops and crackheads next to the gas pumps while pulling into a truck stop. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch together.